I'm particularly fond of the Rock Theatre in Budapest because I think they're very brave and they're very adventurous, and I think that they're the only Eastern Bloc country that has a modern rock theatre as an entity in itself, and they write a lot of their own rock shows, and they're terribly interested and have been for several years in doing the sort of musicals which are evolving in the West. And I've seen Jesus Christ Superstar and Evita there, and I got to know them very well. And they were very, very keen, and one of the first people to ask us to do Les Misérables. And they, I discovered, had a summer festival, which was very intriguing for us, where they were going to start the show, where there was a 6,500-seater auditorium, and they were going to do it with a cast of 150 and a huge orchestra, and we quite frankly couldn't wait to get on the plane to see what they would do with it. It was also the very first production that wasn't like ours, and I was delighted that they had such a triumph with it. The Summer Theatre is a stadium, the Rake Stadium, in front of the most fabulous cathedral, where they build a stage, and so you have a most dramatic backdrop, which they illuminate, and they do it late at night, and have a wonderful sound system. And it has a great sense of the epic. Look, it's sort of Budapest's version of doing it in a Greek amphitheatre.
I smell women, smell them in the air. Think I'll drop my anchor in that harbour over there.
Lovely ladies, smell them through the smoke. 7 days at sea can make you hungry for a poke.
Even stokers need a little stoke.
Waiting for a bite, waiting for the customers who only come at night. Lovely ladies, ready for the pull, standing up or lying down or any way at all. Bargain prices up against the wall. Lovely ladies, waiting in the dark, ready for a thick one or a quick one in the park.
Long time, short time, anytime, my dear. Cost a little extra if you want to take a year.
Quick and cheap is underneath the gear.
Szép hosszú haj, szép hosszú sejmes és dús. Ha eladnád, 2 frankot kidobnék rá. Hadd vágjam már, ne bántson, engedjen el. Túl kevés rá, legyen hát 10 frank az ár. Gondold meg jól,
Úgy kell a pénz,
jól gondold át.
nincs máson már, fizetnem kell 10 franktán még, megment Cosette.
Lovely Ladies is a scene which came after a very sad song, which is I Dreamed a Dream, J'avais rêvé d'une autre vie in French at that time. And we are trying to find a way not to have another difficult, sad moment, because it was already 15 minutes that the show had started, having at the same time some exciting scene, some exciting musical moment with a complete different mood, and at the same time not being funny, because there was nothing to be funny about, because Fantine was going to die in the next 5 minutes or 10 minutes, and she was going to sell her hair, and she was going to sell her teeth, and she was going to sell herself to end it.
You know, when people are very talented, after 5 minutes you completely forget the foreign language, because we saw it in Japanese, in Hebrew, and it is very fast we forget completely the foreign language, and as it's much better for us to have a musical in the language of the country, you know, as they used to do before with the opera. For instance, Puccini opera was always in the language of the country, in French, in France, in Spanish, and Puccini wanted, because he wanted people to understand the lyrics.
Les Misérables presented a couple of enormous challenges. One was that we could find ways of doing staging that were very much like Nickleby. But in some ways, there was a difference. There was this one huge requirement, which it was that in the second act, the company had to build a barricade on stage, and there had to be 2/3 of the second act had to take place on this barricade. And it had to be very real, and it had to be very large. I mean, it was a staging object, a sculptural object. This is the barricade. It's really just a conglomeration of wooden objects. It basically is in two pieces that are driven across the stage and tilt 45 degrees. They don't look as if they're going to tilt when you first see them. I suppose that's the reason people find them so dramatic, is the scale of them and the fact that they move laterally and then, as it were, bend their backs and fall down to the ground. It makes a wonderful dramatic moment, something that you can only do once or twice in any show.
The whole idea of revolution is a very, very difficult one because of course, we are dealing with a student insurrection of 1832 and not the French Revolution. And the French Revolution was 40 years before that, over 40 years before. And so one of our first tasks was to try to disentangle an audience's perception of revolution, to get to stop them thinking automatically that we were dealing with the French Revolution of Tale of Two Cities and 1789. Victor Hugo himself doesn't do that very well in the novel. He makes a lot of assumptions. The reader of the novel knew that at the time when these insurrections were happening in Paris, life was appalling for the vast majority of the population. So Hugo didn't need to underline that part of it.
I believe that within almost a week, the first printing was sold out, and they had to keep reprinting it. And in fact, when we were opening the show in Washington, just before we did the Broadway tryout, we discovered that because the American Civil War was taking place more or less at the same time as the novel came out, I think within 2 years, and all Robert E. Lee, the Confederate soldiers, had a copy in their saddlebags of Les Misérables, and in fact, to the point, his soldiers were rechristened Les Misérables, because it was the novel which is what really represented everything that they were fighting for.